We're here to be authentic. Every symptom in our life, our physiological, our psychological, our intellectual, our business, finance, all those 7 areas are offering us feedback to get us authentic. So we're in a sustainable, fair exchange with other people. So we have a clear consciousness. So we maximize our potential in life.
Welcome to the Time Has Come podcast. My name is Graham Wardle, and today I have a very special guest to share with you all. His name is Dr. John F. Demartini. He is a world-renowned human behavior expert, author, and educator. With over 5 decades of research and teaching experience, he developed the Demartini method, which is a scientific approach to understanding and then transforming human behavior. His work has empowered millions worldwide to realize their full potential by aligning with their highest values and understanding the hidden order in life's chaos. Now, today, we're going to dive into many of these groundbreaking concepts so that we can learn how to lead more purposeful and inspired lives. So please join me in welcoming Dr. John F. Demartini to the show.
Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Good to be with you. I'm really excited for this conversation. I have first heard of you back when I watched The Secret movie years and years ago, and I just started stumbling onto your content once again when I knew I was going to interview you, and I am so excited to have this conversation with you. I've read The Breakthrough Experience, and I have so many questions, and I really want to start with a pivotal moment in your life with your mentor, Mr. Bragg, 93 years old, and how he changed your life. Can we start there and then take that as a launching pad into this journey today?
In 1972, I was living on the North Shore of Oahu. I was a long-haired hippie surfer. And I was riding big waves, and I nearly died and was unconscious. When I came out of that, I ended up being led to a health food store, to a yoga class, and a special guest speaker, Paul C. Bragg, was at the yoga class. Up until that point, I thought I was going to be a surfer. I was helping make surfboards, watching Dick Brewer. I was a high school dropout. I was told in first grade I would never be able to read or write or communicate effectively, never amount to anything, never go very far in life because I had a learning, speaking challenge. But this one night, when Mr. Bragg spoke, which I thought he was 93, but it turned out he was a little younger than that. Somebody had told me he was 93, so I just assumed that up until I found out later. He spoke to me in such a way, even though he's speaking to a group of about 35 people sitting on the floor, he really got to me, and he made me think that maybe I could overcome my learning problems. Maybe I could overcome my speech and reading issues. And that night, when he spoke, I had, I guess you could say, an epiphany or a vision of me standing in front of a group of people and being able to speak properly and being intelligent. So that night I had a dream that someday I could become intelligent and someday, I could learn how to speak properly and read properly. So that was 52 years ago. And I slowly but surely learned how to read. I had to go and practice it with a dictionary. My mom I went back from Hawaii. I flew back to Los Angeles, hitchhiked back to Texas where they lived, and started to go through a dictionary and read and recite 20 words a day, spell them, put them in a sentence. My mom used to test me on those. She was a crossword puzzle lady. And I grew my vocabulary 20,000 words in the next 2 years, doing 30 words a day and not going to bed until I had them polished. And then I went back and I started to, I got my GED and I got into junior college, and I eventually went to college and I started Excel, and I went from the bottom to the top of the class. And then I just never stopped. I've been 52 years. I've been reading every single day and writing and speaking. And that's what I love doing. It's teach, research, write, and travel. That's it. I've delegated everything else. I don't do anything else. I only do 4 things. My girlfriend says, I told her, I said, listen, if I could delegate to George Clooney lovemaking, can you take care of that? Can I do that? She said, I'd love you even more. I delegate everything. That's a bad joke. But I just read every day. I write every day. I teach every day. I travel the world. And that's all I care about doing. That's what I love doing. That's my core competence today. But I was told that I would never do those things at one time. So it doesn't matter where you start. It matters, are you willing to do what it takes to make things real? Manifesting things you really want.
And Mr. Bragg, from your book there, he had you say something to yourself to break through a limiting belief there. How did that sort of shape and change your way of looking at yourself and life?
At the end of his presentation, he invited whoever was there to come and join him on the other side of the island at Fort Jerusalem, Waikiki. We were on the North Shore. That was the South Shore.
Okay.
And that he does a class every morning. And I was so inspired by what he said that night. At 5:45, I got up. Instead of going into the water, I decided I was going to go hitchhike to the other side of the island to meet with him. And most of the people there were 50, 60, 70, and 80-year-olds. I was the only kid there. But I learned from him. Over the next 3 weeks, I did that each day. And finally, he said that he's going back to Santa Barbara and Mount Shasta, and he hopes to see us in the future. And I thought, oh my God, my mentor's leaving. And I never really had a lot of courage to walk up to the guy. I was a little bit intimidated by him. But that day when he said he's leaving, I wasn't going to see him. I just figured I'd wait till everybody else left. And I walked up to him and I said, sir, whatever you said that night in the when we were at Waimea at the Sunset Recreation Halls, you have that. He said, whatever you said that night, you said that with whatever we decide and vision our life to do will become the truth. And I saw that I was going to learn how to read and become intelligent and become a teacher. And he said, that's exactly right, young man. I said, well, sir, I don't know how to read. I got a learning problem. I got a speech then. I started going to speech pathologist when I was a year and a half old. So I don't know how I'm going to do this. And he looked at me with a big smile and he put his arm in his hand on my shoulder and he said, I want you to repeat this statement every single day and never miss a day for the rest of your lives. And say it. If you say it every single day, sooner or later the cells of your body will tingle with it, so will the will. So he told me to say that I am a genius and I apply my wisdom. If you're something at the time, that's a far stretch from what I was, I could stand on a surfboard and I had waves, weed, women, wine, whoopee. That was about it. That was my vocabulary. Stoked. So, but he said that if I said that every single day, that my life would change. 52 years ago in November, I have never missed a day. This morning, I said it at least a dozen times. I now realize that a genius is one who lets their voice and the vision on the inside become louder than all opinions on the outside. And when you do that, you do something with your life. You don't let the world on the outside distract you from the calling on this. And one who pursues challenges that inspire. I learned a long time ago, if you don't pursue challenges that inspire you, you're going to attract challenges down. And so if you don't prioritize your life and fill your day with high priority actions, it fills up with low priority distractions. And if you don't, invest in yourself in high quality investments that go up in value in yourself, knowledge and wealth building things, then you're going to have unexpected bills and distractions, and entropy is going to take over you because you're not focused on what's most important. So I basically tried prioritizing my life. If you don't plant flowers in the garden of your mind, you're going to pull weeds all your life. So I started to focus on how I wanted it. He said that what we think for ourselves, what we visualize, what we affirm, what we feel, what we write, and what we act upon becomes real. So I just started following that little formula, and here I am, told I would never read. My first grade teacher had my parents come to the school because I went from normal reading to remedial reading to a dunce cat because I couldn't read. I couldn't make sense out of words. And she told my parents, I'm afraid your son will never be able to read, never be able to write properly. I was born off with a hand and leg turned in. So I wrote backwards. And she said, he'll never be able to read, never be able to write, probably not be able to communicate effectively, probably not go very far in life without it. Well, 2 years later, well, 59, I was 7 when she told me that, 6, almost 7. 17 is when I met Bragg, almost 18. And I'm now 70 in just a couple months. So, 52 years later, after him telling me that, I learned how to read. I'm now just about to hit the 31,000 books I've read. I've learned how to write, and I've written probably 300 books, about 46 self-help books, and a whole bunch of texts and writings, thousands and thousands of articles. They said I would never, communicate. I reach billions of people in every form of media that's out there, movies, television, you name it, and never go very far in life. I've traveled 21 million miles in flight, and I live on a ship that full-time travels around the world. So I full-time travel. And I never mount anything. Well, I'm about 50 times financial independence. If you take financial independence and multiply it times 50, that's not right. So everything she told me, I wish I could give her a big hug because she said the right thing for my life. But she passed away a long time. But I would say that it's not, what you've been through, what you're going through, what all those obstacles. It's saying, are you willing to do the principles and actions that have stood the test of time for great achievements? And if you give yourself permission to do that and stop the story about how there's an obstacle and just focus on the solution, amazing things change in your life. And I've seen that. I've watched thousands and thousands of people lives change because of that. So, I'm very inspired to, have that journey. People ask me, would you change anything? No. Why would I change anything? Do you have any regrets? No. I'm grateful for my life. And I was interviewed by Vogue magazine one time, and they said, Dr. Demartini, if there's anybody in the world that you wish you could be, who would it be? I said, why would I want to be anybody else? Why would I want to be second at being somebody else like the first queen? Yeah. I love my life. People don't realize that you can be grateful for your life and have an inspired life. It's a prioritizing. And you do something with contribution. You make a difference. If there's no reason why we can't make the contribution and become very fortunate, it's about caring about human beings.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. I want to just double back to this idea of the inner world being louder than the outer world. Why do you think so many people have a difficulty tuning into and listening to and making the inner world louder so they can follow that guidance?
Well, thousands of years ago, I think that people, were generalist. They lived in the country or lived out more nomadic. And then they started getting into groups and started having more of a sedentary life, class structure, and economic dependency on other people. You didn't do well if you were by yourself. So you depend on people. So people's opinion of you could make a difference whether you did well or not. So people started worrying about what other people thought. And the thing is as Ernest Becker in his Denial of Death book talks about, there's 2 paths of heroism. The hero of the collective, the hero of the individual. The hero of the collective is fitting in and being a good little person that fits in, but you don't make a difference there. You fit in, you don't stand out. You don't make any major contribution. It's the individual hero that's willing to be ridiculed, violently opposed, until their ideas are self-evident and contribute with a sustainable, fair exchange in a way that makes a difference in the world, that changes the world. So both people are worried about what people think. I always say that any area of your life you don't empower, people overpower you. If you don't empower yourself in business, you'll be told what to do. If you don't empower yourself in finance, you'll be told what to work. If you don't empower yourself in relationships, you'll do honeydew things around the house that you don't love. If you don't empower yourself socially, you'll be, living and subordinating to misinformation and propaganda. If you don't empower yourself physically, you'll be told what drugs to take and ordinance during it. If you don't empower yourself spiritually, you'll probably subordinate to some anthropomorphic, geocentric, Aristotelian kind of construct about religion or something, and have this finite God that's monolithic and monolithic. So I'm a firm believer that we're capable of doing something extraordinary in all areas. When I was 18, I wanted to master my life. I didn't know what that meant yet, but it sounded cool. I saw a David Carradine Kung Fu talk presentation on television. I thought, I want to be a master. So I set out at 18 to divide life into 7 areas. spiritual, mental, career, financial, family, and social and physical. And I said, I'm going to read and study and learn from the greatest minds that stand on the shoulders of the greatest people that ever written in those fields. And I have to go and master those areas. So I wanted to create original ideas at searching the things on the planet. I wanted to create a global business, which I've been blessed to do. I wanted to create financial independence, which I've been blessed to do. I want to have a global family. I don't live in a little spot. I have global family. And I want to have social influence. I met amazing people around the world in many, 160 countries I've gotten to speak in now. And that physically I'm pretty vital for 70 years old. I'm still cranking, putting in the hours, and I can still do 100 and 120 hours a week. No problem.
Wow.
And I'm inspired by my life, and I believe people deserve to be acknowledging the magnificence of who they are and what's happening in their life. It's all on the way, not in the way, if you know how to ask the right questions and get past your unconscious limited belief system and transcend it. So I'm a firm believer you can master your life. I love helping people do that. That's what inspires me every day.
That's fantastic. Well, let's dive into that then, because that's one of my questions that I wanted to talk about, the quantum collapse, the breakthrough experience, and duality. So I think duality is an important sort of base layer to understand in life. Can we talk about the nature of our reality in duality, and then kind of building that towards this idea of the quantum collapse that you talk about in your book here that I've just finished reading? That was fantastic.
Yeah, the book that's been around for 20 something years. So that's just called the Demartini method now, because that's what it turned into big. But I've been developing that since I was 18, that methodology. But when you walk down the street, you'll meet people and you'll assess them. 2 Nobel Prize winners in 2016 found the place cells, the grid cells in the hippocampus and the adrenal complex in the brain. And we literally set up a hierarchical perception of people and put them above us or below us, or put them in a hierarchy. So we either subordinate to them or subordinate to them or just reflect. And when we meet somebody, we think that they're more intelligent than us. We tend to minimize ourselves as we exaggerate them. Or if they're more savvy and successful than us, we minimize us and exaggerate them. Or more wealthy than us and minimize ourselves. Anytime we exaggerate somebody, we minimize ourselves relative to them by the law of contrast. Wilhelm Wundt, father of experimental psychology, wrote all about this, 1897. Anytime we also do that in any area, and it could be multiple areas, you could think, well, they're more successful, they're more intelligent, they got more wealth, they got more social connections than I do. Who am I? And you minimize yourself. Anytime you minimize yourself, you're not authentic. You have an imposter syndrome. And at the same time, you can also look at that idiot and feel cocky. Look how stupid they are. Look how, what a failure. And we can minimize people and exaggerate ourselves. And again, imposter syndrome. So if we exaggerate or minimize others and minimize or exaggerate ourselves, we're not authentic. And we're not loving somebody. We're judging somebody. And every time we do, we're either too proud or too humble to admit what we see in them inside us. And that disowned part is an empty feeling inside, because we're here to love. We're here to appreciate people. We're here to have sustainable, fair exchange. And if we're above them, we're going to get narcissistic and not factor them. We'll be careless relative to them. And if we're minimizing ourselves, we'll be altruistic and sacrificing ourselves for them. Anytime we try to get them to live in our values or us to live in their values, we have futility instead of maximum utility. But when we actually love them and reflect and see that what we see in them is us, pointing our fingers 3 back, and actually level the playing field and have a unity consciousness instead of a duality consciousness, a contrast, we open our hearts and we are willing to do something in a sustainable, fair exchange with them, which maximizes our performance, reduces the noise in our brain, helps us in business, it helps us economically manage our monies, because we're now in the executive functioning in the medial prefrontal cortex instead of the amygdala's response. Because when we judge, we're in our amygdala, seeking or avoiding their prey or predator. And we want to avoid and seek seek or avoid. And we're all emotionally in volatility. The second we love people, we're stable, we're authentic. And we want to be loved for who we are, not try to be somebody we're not. And so the judgment of other people cost us, and the love of other people reward us. And that's something simple. We've all heard that, but there's a real neuroscience behind it. And it's, the way the brain is set up, I can go down the rabbit hole with it. I've been studying neuroscience for freaking 50 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go down that thing and we could get all the way down to the quantum level. But what's interesting is we're here to be authentic. Every symptom in our lives, our physiological, our psychological, our intellectual, our business, finance, all those 7 areas are offering us feedback to get us authentic. So we're in a sustainable, fair exchange with other people. So we have a clear consciousness. So we maximize our potential in life. And that puts us back in our executive function. And when we're there, we tend to pursue challenges that inspire us, and we come up with creative, innovative ideas that contribute to the world. We become philanthropic instead of debaucherous. And we become, we expand our awareness and our space and time horizons instead of shrink. And to me, that's what I do what I can to help people with that, because the breakthrough experience, that book is a kind of a watered down version of the program that I've been teaching for 35 years, to help people master their lives. And people, I have young people that start early in it and do extraordinary things. I mean, I had a 9-year-old girl that started at a young age, and by 14, she signed a deal with Disney. I've seen a lady own a fashion thing by 15 is worth about $15 million. I've seen people, I have a 3-time Grammy winner that went off and started just 12 years ago. And he's got 3 Grammys already. I've watched people that apply the principles that stand the test of time. And all I'm doing is passing on information. I'm just standing on the shoulders of people, researching this, gathering it, and clinically watching people and developing things all these years. And it's inspiring to watch what everybody's capable of doing. And I hear all kinds of excuses. People want to come up with excuses. They want to be victims of history instead of masters of destiny. And I don't allow them to.
Yeah.
I said, no. I stopped them, push them, slap them around a bit. I said, stop the bullshit. Let's get down to basics and let's get into motion and watch your life change.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's something that I've been, as I was reading your book there and doing my research, watching videos on you and learning from you, I am blown away, and I'm excited to take that full course that you offer there on your website, because it looks profound. And some of the stories that you shared in the Breakthrough Experience book there, they touched my heart, and it made me see and realize, like you said, how so often in my own life, and I've witnessed in others' lives, and in the book there, people cling to the story of victimhood, or cling to the story of how this person or the situation has wronged me, and therefore I can't live this way, and so getting back to this idea of duality and understanding the balance of this, and I think the way you put it is like everything, God is in everything. So this is all in divine order. And so it's our job, at least from my understanding, is to then see that, and to the lopsided balance, to kind of come back to this equilibrium and see the divine order in everything and how it's serving you, and step into that. So the process, correct me if I'm wrong, is about understanding the lopsidedness of our perceptions, and then is that effectively what it is? It's a rebalancing of the emotional charges inside?
Yes. When you infatuate with somebody that you meet, you're conscious of their upsides and blind, ignorant, and unconscious of their downsides. So you create in your amygdala an assignment of valency that's stored in the hippocampus as an episodic memory, and it's stored up as the subconscious mind is what they used to call it. And it stores up an emotional charge that makes you prevent seeking. You seek it, you prevent trying to avoid it. So it kind of forces you to seek it. And it creates an impulse. Nucleus accumbens comes online. It gives you a pleasure sequence. It stimulates dopamine and kephalons, and you off to run to try to consume it because it represents prey to you. You want to eat it and take it in. When you're infatuated with somebody, you want to eat them. Excuse the expression.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is, as long as you do that, a day, a week, a month, or a few months later, you'll find out that there were downsides to that person you're attracted to, but you were blind initially. Fatal Attraction, Michael Douglas, Elaine Close. So at first, you're going to assume there's positives without negatives, but they were there, and your intuition was whispering. If you ask a woman if she'd been infatuated with a guy, yes, and go to the moment when you did, great. Your intuition was whispering, don't go too quick, don't be gullible, keep your eyes open, watch out. Your intuition was whispering and trying to whisper to you the downside so you level the playing field. And we have a thing called hedonic adaptation. The moment we get a pleasure experience, it automatically, with homeostatic feedback, makes it bring it back down to try to get you where you're not infatuated. Because when you do, you minimize yourself to death. You'll altruistically sacrifice for that person, and you'll fear the loss of them and create jealousies and all kind of drama because of this infatuation, because you're unconscious of the downsides. So if you ask quality questions that make you conscious of what you were unconscious of and balance the equation of perception, so the infatuation is turned into an objective view where you see both the things you are conscious, positive and negative, liked and disliked. Because if you live with somebody for 60 years, you're going to have things you like and dislike. You're not going to get a one-sided person. So if you see that, instead of having the wisdom of the ages with the aging process and going through the volatilities in the unconscious state, you now have the wisdom of the ages without the aging process, because you asked quality questions and became cognizant of both. And when you see simultaneously both, you're not infatuated, you're present. You feel love for them. You're poised. And that's where the executive function comes in, and you're now in systems 2 thinking, where you're now thinking before you react emotion. Instead of impulsing, going, fatal attraction. And the same thing on resentment. When you resent somebody, you're conscious of the downsides, unconscious of the upsides. So your intuition is saying, well, there must be a purpose why I had to run into this person or this person I hate. There must be some purpose why, and it got to have some reason to, must be meaning to this. Your intuition is trying to give you the positive side, but you may not be wise enough to see it. Your resentment and instinct makes you avoid the person and label the person with some sort of subjective bias instead of actually asking, what are the benefits? So if you ask quality questions and equilibrate the mind and see both sides simultaneously, you liberate yourself from the emotions and the vicissitudes and volatilities and instabilities of the amygdala's misrepresentation of reality. Because it's trying to make you survive instead of thrive. It's trying to make sure, you're trying to avoid predator, seek prey, which means that the world around you externally runs you. But if you know how to be a master, like a master martial artist doesn't, one of the master martial artists taught me a long time ago, a master is not attacked. A master is invited to dance because they're prepared with foresight, not hindsight. And so when somebody attacks them, they know exactly, like the Matrix, right? They know how to move the hands and just take the bullets, no problem.
Dodge the bullets, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Just, it's interesting. We're going to dance today. This is cool, But knowing how to ask quality questions is what I've been working on for the last 50 years. Now, Stephen Wolfram, the mathematician, said it really nicely. In information theory by Claude Shannon and other 2 Nobel Prize winners, they showed that the difference between order and discipline, or divine perfection, as Leibniz would describe it, and imperfection, was missing information. So if you're infatuated with somebody and you're unconscious downside, you got missing information. If you're resentful and you're unconscious of the upside, you got missing information. If you see both sides, there's nothing missing. When there's nothing missing, you see the hidden order. When there's something missing, you have a perceptive disorder. And the disorder makes you extrinsically run by misperceptions. The order makes you poised and present and allows you to dance. And to me, the mastery of life is the dance, not the victims of circumstance.
Yeah. This is fantastic. Dr. Demartini, I've done a lot of acting in my life. And as an actor, you're trying to understand emotions and you're trying to understand the journey of the character. And so much of what a story is revealing of information. And, this character knows this, but this character doesn't know that. And there's miscommunications and there's emotions and whatnot. And so what you just shared, I think, was very fascinating for my mind as an actor, going, this is a tool that I've just learned from you in terms of the acting process. So playing a character who's being upset or is emotionally charged in one direction or the other. It's what information is missing, because there must be information missing for that emotional charge to exist.
That's it. Faith Martin, who has helped a lot of famous actors from Australia. I mean, Kidman and Mel Gibson, and you name them. They just go down the list of all the people, Russell Crowe. All of those Australian actors just about went through Faith's work. And Faith has been with me for 28 years. And teaches this work to actors. She's training actors constantly on how to change the perceptions and get present and not attached to those. An emotion is simply an incomplete awareness. But if you're going to be an actor, you need to be able to not attach to that and play that part, and then come out of that part and play another part. But if you actually have a wound in your life that you're resentful to somebody, and all of a sudden this is reminding you, this part to ask you to do is reminding you of a wound, when you're actually doing it, you're going to be distracted because you got subconsciously stored baggage in there that this is reminding you of, and now you're all of a sudden not present.
Yes.
So she shows people how to be able to move in and out of polarity and to unity, back and forth, and ask questions and center themselves and play whatever role is needed without an attachment. There's a lot of freedom in it.
Wow. Man, my brain is spinning right now. Thank you for that. That's amazing. So one of the things that you said in your book, you said emotions are lies. So you said, so is this a lie because it's incomplete? Is that what you mean by an emotion is a lie?
Yeah. When you infatuate with somebody, I have people at the Breakthrough Experience, which is my signature program, which I've done 1,217 times. People come in there and I said, identify who you have admired most in your life and who you've despised most in your life. Okay, and they pick somebody. I said, great. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take you through this process and we're going to show you how elusive that perception was. When you come out of this process, you'll have tears of gratitude for this individual. Either way, you'll be in tears of gratitude. And they go, wow, no way I can be grateful for this terrible person, right? This evil person. I mean, I actually worked with a Palestinian, 5 Israeli leaders and 3 Palestinian leaders all in a room and mediated a major conflict that was going on. And one of the ladies said at the beginning, she says, do you believe in absolute evil? And I said, no, that's just a human misunderstanding of the universe. So she would basically think of this guy in the room was absolute evil. This is the arch enemy. They're in the same room. You could put a knife in the room and it would just sit in the air because the energy was such in. When she got through, there was tears of gratitude to the same individual. And all it was is making her accountable to build greater balance sheet into balance. Make her accountable to own whatever they see in others. See, we only resent people on the outside that represent a part of us that we're ashamed of on the inside, that we've dissociated from the shame and created a pride facade to cover up our shame because they're reminding us of it. We want to avoid them because they're reminding us of what we're trying to avoid in ourselves. And so I helped her go in and find out where she's done everything she's condemning him for, because she's targeting the things she's judging herself that she's trying to dodge and feel ashamed of. And there's a lot of moral hypocrisies that we all live in. So what happens is when she stopped and she owned the trait and then found out how it actually served her, her career came from that guy. Her notoriety, her leadership, her millions of followers, her books, her opportunities to meet amazing leaders in the world, all came from this guy she resented. And she was in tears. She goes, my God, I feel thankful for this guy. So now we're talking. Now we can mediate a conflict. Because as long as you're too proud to admit what you see in them is inside you, there's no mediation. You're going to project onto them and expect them to live in your values. You're going to call that negotiation instead of a sustainable, fair exchange. And the same thing on this guy. This guy had a similar view of her. When they were done, it was just tears of gratitude. And all of a sudden, they were now talking. And the mediator that was there, 14 years trying to mediate a conflict, in one afternoon, that conflict was mediated. She said, I've spent 14 years working on this. You did it in a matter of hours. I said, that's because I held people accountable to have reflective awareness and to balance out their perceptions and stop thinking that their biased opinions and their opinions, not truths, are the ones that are truth, because they're basically incomplete awarenesses and they're basically our opinions. Opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth, and that which circulates the most usually have the least values. The more polarized they are, the more distorted they are, and the more sensational media loves to market these things. The truth is never in the hands of the mass, subjectively biased, polarized extremes. It's in the center. And we all have access to that center if we ask the right questions and be accountable. So I love helping people do that.
It's beautiful. Do you see this as like the meaning of life, the meaning of existence, to continue this journey of expansion, sort of like polarizing things, and then expansion and love? Like, what do you see the grand design of this whole experience of reality being for?
Well, Will Durant, the philosopher, wrote a whole series of books on the history of civilization, the story of philosophy, and many other books. He said the synthesis of dualisms, and then the emergence of the new set of dualisms, and the synthesis and the new dualisms, as whatever we know, knowledge. See, when we're infatuated with someone, we don't know that. When we resent somebody, we don't know that. When we love them, we know them. So when we know something and have epistemological knowledge, we automatically get promoted to our next illusion, our next mystery. No matter how much you know, what you know is insignificant compared to infinity. That's why they honored Socrates. That whatever he knew that was beyond that was way beyond that. There's way more knowledge than what we know. So you constantly are going from judgment to indifference to love, and judgment, indifference to love. And that's the journey. And so we do it collectively as society. And Will Durant said that the purpose of that in philosophy was the dialectic, to unify the propositions and to make a synthesis out of it and emerge past it, transcend it, and have this aha moment, this gamma synchronicity in the brain, aha, and all of a sudden see that there was a perfection there. There was nothing out of order in the first place. Epictetus, the Greek philosopher, said, first we blame others, then we blame ourselves, and then there's nothing to blame when we finally wake up. And the same thing for credit. So the second we see both sides of an event, we liberate ourselves from the bondage of the things that occupy space and time in our mind and create all the noise, and allow us to have a clear consciousness and to feel love for our life and for our existence. And so that's what I'm up to, is to try to help people transcend these illusions, which are just lies about reality.
And the byproduct then is greater expanding experiences of love.
Yeah. And there's no end to it. I mean,
there's no end to it. Amazing. Great idea.
There's Nether, who was a physicist, a female physicist, created Nether's theorem. And she said, for every symmetry in the universe, there's a conservation. And now that's pretty abstract for most people, but it's really profound. And anytime we have symmetry in our awareness, and we're able to see both sides simultaneously, we have a conservation of energy and matter. And there's many other great opportunities that come from that. We look at a very small subatomic quantum level. There's a symmetry of particles and antiparticles. Paul Dirac and Nobel Prize winner wrote about that in 1947. It's just called that. At the atomic level, there's recombination, ionization, built and short. And then at the molecular level, there's SN1 and each V1s and SN2, substitution, elimination reaction, build and destroy. At the complex molecular, there's a formulation and deformulation of molecules. At the cell level, there's mitosis and apoptosis. At the structural level of the tissue, you've got plasticity, build and destroy, remodeling constantly. Inside the autonomics, we have the parasympathetic, sympathetic, build and destroy. Inside our psychology, we have the moral licensing effect. Every time we go into fight, we automatically go into shame to counterbalance it, to bring us to homeostasis. This law is universal. I could go all the way to the largest domains of astronomy, and you'll see the same law applying. So this dialectic of duality, unity is part of nature. And so the laws of the universe, nobody violates. Human laws, nobody lives. we come up with these moral ideals about how we're supposed to be based on our amygdala, trying to avoid a pain and seek a pleasure all the time. And we create these idealisms that half the people don't live. And if they do, they're proud, and then they're ashamed when they don't. And it's creating a bipolar world. But all those are entangled in society, and they're related to each other. And that's why you marry somebody that's like your opposite, and have somebody opposite in your family, is to keep you learning to love and learn and grow from all the different components. So there's nothing to get rid of, and there's nothing to seek. As the Buddha said, the desire for that which is unobtainable and the desire to avoid that which is unavoidable is the source of human suffering. So it's time to transcend the dualistic illusion that you can get a one-sided world. I always say bipolar condition is a byproduct to monopolar addiction. We keep being addicted to a one-sided world. You're taught that in all your life. Your grandma, your ma says, be nice, don't be mean, be kind, don't be cruel. And then she beats the hell out of grandpa right afterwards and yells at you and then demands this. And, we're all moral hypocrites with that. So I'm not interested in those, the volatilities that come from pursuing that which is unobtainable and trying to avoid that which is unavoidable. I'm here to understand that you don't have to get rid of any part of yourself to love yourself. And you don't have to seek and find some part of yourself. It's already there. You're just not aware of it because you keep comparing yourself to other people and expecting it to be in their form with their values when it's in your form and your values, and you already have everything. Nothing's missing. In the Breakthrough Experience program that I teach, I show people a science on how to discover nothing's missing. How are you going to have fulfillment when things are missing? You have fulfillment when you realize nothing's missing. You're in a state of awe and grace for the magnificence the way it is. That's the perfection.
That was one of my favorite lines in the book that I read and from your work is nothing is missing. And that's your brain. At first, my brain was like, what are you talking about? Of course, there's things missing. There's this missing. There's this missing. But through the process and what you share, it's revealed. It's all there. It's just missing information. You just don't see it. And then by shifting the perspective,
you're unconscious.
Yeah. So can I just want to double back to this idea of man's laws and universal laws. So in what you've taught, what you teach and how you share and your mission in life, what's your perspective or your opinion on man's laws of things in the world? There's always heated debate about, should somebody, if they murder someone, should they go to jail? So do you believe in laws, like man's laws like that? Like, should we have those types of things? Do they serve a purpose, or do you transcend that?
Well, that's a great question, because I get to work with all people, but the perpetrators and the victims, as they call it in today's society. I get to work on both sides. And John Locke called it a social contract, where the people that had been either voted or not voted into power, the oppressor, if you will, into society, usually people that have wealth or influence or intelligence or some sort of social connection. They moved up the social thing, got voted into position, and then whatever challenges their value system, they tend to impose and project those values onto society, and that becomes the rules. Of course, another person gets in and the rules change. The rules are constantly changing based on who's there. And if you go around the world, the rules are different. In South Africa, the Zuma, who was the former president, who was indicted to all kinds of things, had 9 wives. In America, you go to prison for that. Over there, you're honored. The African nation, the more wives you have, the more powerful you're a man. And in France, I was sitting in a restaurant when Bill Clinton was being attacked by all the, Victorian specialists in religion, for having an affair or whatever. And in France, at the restaurant, they were all laughing at the American TV, thinking, what a crazy thing. We wouldn't even hire somebody to be president if they weren't with a bunch of women. Totally different culture.
Wow.
And I was like, well, that's interesting. But there are variations. As Montaigne traveled the world to study these mores, he found that there was a whole spectrum of pro-lifers, pro-borders, pro-guns, anti-guns. And for every trait or anything that you've proposed as an ideal, the logaritmic escalation creates the opposite to counterbalance it, to teach you not to be so elated or opinionated about a side and to be smacked by the other side to make you more holistic. The whole system of legislation and laws and things like that they're really a byproduct of sort of a narrow-mindedness that hasn't actually comprehended the bigger picture. Because if we look carefully, whatever's collectively repressed in society, there's a select group of people that are going to live it out. And people don't get that. They make them the villains. But the society is actually thinking about it, but not doing it. And so the villain makes the people over here function as repressors. Whenever there's a repression, there's an expression. So the person that goes, I'd like to kill that son of a gun, but doesn't do it, is contributing and is part of the energy of the person that doesn't think about it. So there's always a pair of opposites. So the villain is part of the necessity of society. And this is something that's been known. It's not that Nietzsche wrote about it and Gurdjieff wrote about it. Many other people in history have written about it. Machiavelli talked about it. And he said that, I'm the most virtuous and the most vicious. I went through the Oxford Dictionary 40 years ago because I noticed that whenever I was saying to other people, it was for me. I'd talk to them and I'd emphasize it. And I go, I'm talking to myself. So I went to the Oxford Dictionary and I went through and underlined every possible human behavioral trait. I found 4,628 traits. And then I read, okay, who do I know that represents that trait to the fullest? And I wrote the name of the person that's the most extreme displayer of that behavior that I could think of. And then I went in there and I said, okay, John, go to a moment where and when you perceive yourself displaying or demonstrating the same specific traits that I am judging in this person. and identify where it was, when it was, who'd I do it to, he perceived it. And I kept doing that until the quantity and quality of what I saw in them was in me. So I owned what I was projecting. I found that I had all 4,628 traits. I was nice, mean, kind, cruel, generous, stingy, open, closed, forthright, private. I was honest, dishonest. I had every trait I found in that 4,628 traits. When I did, I noticed that now when I meet people, instead of judging them and jumping to a conclusion and being hooked by an infatuation or resentment and seek and avoid, I was just present with them. And I looked and I saw, that's me at this moment. And that's me at this moment. And that was really revealing, because then I realized my own judgments of myself were the ones that were being projected onto the judgments of others. So I went back to those 4,628 traits. I went in there, and if I thought it was a positive trait, I asked, what are the downsides? And if I thought it was a negative trait, what was the upsides, until I saw that it was neither. It was just a trait. Because any trait that we think is terrible, if it's here, it would have gone extinct if it was terrible. If it's here, it must serve a purpose. My job is to find out what's its service. And I assure you that the collective society is going to express what other people are repressing. So we go around and say, thou shalt not do that. And then that's exactly what happens. In the Old Testament, for instance, supposedly the God on the Mount Sinai is revealing, thou shalt not kill in the 10 Commandments. But there's 24,970 murderings or killings or deaths from the Old Testament God in the Old Testament. You can get them. It's all referenced. So you stop and you go, wait a minute now, that's a contradiction and a moral hypocrisy. I'm writing a textbook now on the history of the evolution of morality from the earliest development of the brain all the way till today, because most people are hoodwinked and subordinating without ever questioning and thinking for themselves. They're just parroting what they've been told instead of asking, is this even sensible? Is this universal? Does a universal intelligence, and does it limit itself by monolingual ideas of a particular culture at a particular time and a particular belief that's changing over time? If so, then we really got a narrow thinking process. But we have to open up and look at it's constantly evolving. Language is evolving. More constructs are evolving. And the question is all of it has been on this planet serving where it would have gone extinct. It's all there. So I've been broadening my awareness and finding out the bigger picture that's going on. When you do, you realize nothing's missing, and I have all of it. I've done them all. I'm constantly changing people's personas and their stories that they write. They've been running a story about being a victim. They come to the breakthrough experience, that's gone. And so I just murdered their persona that they've been running, that persona that they've been living for 20 years. So I'm a serial murderer. I'm a serial killer of their personas.
Right.
And when I look, I've got that same behavior. I've just killed an identity that they once were running their life by. And now they're in a new perspective. And I just liberate them. So I'm saving lives, and I'm also a murderer. I'm all those things when I stop and look at it from that perspective.
This is what I love about your work, is that there is this sort of, what's it called? A quantum state of just equilibrium of understanding the balance of both of them. And there's a peace that comes from it. And like you've mentioned many times, a love too. What you've mentioned before also is this process of going through the death of the old persona and stepping into this sort of state of unknown is scary for a lot of people, because the old identity is gone. And so a lot of people, at least in my own experience, I'll speak for myself here, going through my own shifts of letting old personas or old ways of living die. It's tremendously scary to not know who I am.
Well, the thing is, but let's clarify something. There is no such thing as fear of the unknown. That doesn't exist. I've been studying phobias for a long time, almost 50 years. There is no fear of the unknown. We have fear of the content that's emerging in our mind that we're projecting as an assumption that's going to happen. That's what our fear is, not with the unknown. We have fear. So if you're having fear, there's no way you can have any emotion without content in the conscious mind. So if I go in and say, well, I'm having fear of this, I don't know what it is, it's an anxiety. No, stop, go into that moment, and we can identify the content of mind. And that content is what you're fearing. You're anticipating, based on your experiences, what you think could happen, that you're frightened about happening, because you're assuming there's more drawbacks and benefits, more losses and gains, more negatives and positives in that assumption. So it's not an unknown. It's what you think could happen. And that's what gives rise to the fear. And once you realize that, you can change those associations and ratios and transcend that, because all it is an imbalanced ratio perception. Fear is nothing more than an assumption of a negative over a positive. And fantasy is nothing but a positive over negative. And both of those are illusions, because there is no such thing. You can't separate positive from negative in electromagnetism. And charges are inseparable. So if you see one without the other, that's your illusion. That's the lie you have. And therefore, you're now distracted by it. Anything you're infatuated with or resent, anything you're philic or phobic or fantasied or nightmare by, occupies space and time in your mind and runs your mind, because it's stored in the subconscious hippocampus as an episodic memory that has space and time and charge on, valency. And that's what causes our aging process. That's where entropy comes from. Entropy is missing information and charge and valency affecting our physiology.
Man, this is fantastic. I could talk to you for another couple hours. Thank you so much for sharing all this. I got a couple questions before we wrap up here that I ask all my guests. And it's just really personal questions. That one of them's fun, one of them's more of a personal one. You spoke of intuition earlier in our conversation there, and I'm always curious how someone, my guests, experience their own divine guidance, or if someone's a religious person, the Holy Spirit, or intuition. How does Dr. John Demartini experience guidance in his life? What does it feel like? What's your experience of that?
In the brain, you have delta waves, which are sleep, and you got beta waves, which is wake. Halfway between them is alpha theta waves. And right at that junction, around 8 cycles per second, 7.8 cycles, is an alpha theta junction. And the moment that occurs, a gamma synchronicity in the entire brain synchronizes in the cortex. This gamma synchronicity is an aha moment, a eureka moment, where you see the hidden order in the apparent chaos. If you're parasympathetic, you're seeing more support than challenge. If you're sympathetic, you get more challenge and support. One is seek, one's avoid. Both of those are incomplete awarenesses. There's missing information. That's why you're seeking and avoiding, because you think you got a prey or predator. But the truth is, you need predator and prey. If you got prey without predator, you'd be emaciated. You get gluttonous and fat and lose fitness. If you had a predator without a prey, you get emaciated and starved and lose fitness. You put prey and predator together, you get maximum fitness, maximum utility. And so that gamma synchronicity, we've all had moments of it. And there are moments we get tears of knowing, tears of gratitude, where we know that whatever we're reading, listening to, watching, or viewing, a baby's born, a marriage is happening, a reading a book, you're watching a movie. Anytime you get a tear of gratitude, you get one of those aha moments. That's a sign of authenticity, a sign of equanimity, and a confirmation that you're on track for your mission in life. And people know that, I ask people by the thousands, how many of you just kind of know to follow that? And they go, yeah, because it's a confirmation of authenticity. The brain reveals electrophysiologically our authenticity, and it's trying to bring autonomic regulation. Heart rate variability comes at its maximum. Your ability to adapt and be resilient. I wrote a book recently on the essentials of emotional intelligence and on the resilient mind, and talks about the details of this. We automatically maximize our resilience. We maximize our abstraction. We maximize our full potential in that state of perfect equanimity, where we're in the enlightened state. We literally have more biophotons in our brain going between our DNA and connecting things at that moment. We have enlightenment in our brain. And so, yeah, that's a reproducible, duplicatable state that anybody can learn to do. I've been training people on doing that for decades. I am certain that a person can learn how to do that and master that. And it's extremely rewarding, because in that moment, nothing's missing. Yeah. You're not distracted. Your mind is cleared. Your vision is expanded. In fact, when you do that, the prefrontal cortex lights up. There's an area from there all the way to the occipital V5, V6, secondary association cortex lights up. And you get an inspired vision with tears in your eyes, and you see it, and there's no murkiness, there's no unclarity, there's no plateauing, there's no resistance. You just get on with it. And you have a spontaneous action, not evoked potentials from external sources, but spontaneous brain function. You're in the flow. That's the flow state, the true flow state, not the false flow state of meaning, but the true flow state. And I love helping people that train them on how to maximize that in their life. And they don't play victims of history when they do that. They're masters of destiny.
Amen. Oh, thank you for sharing that. My last question, it's an interesting one. It's a fun one I came up with while I was on set filming a television show. We were waiting. It was before everybody had cell phones and everybody's distracted and stuff. So everyone's just kind of bored sitting around for them, waiting for the setup, the lights and such. And this question just kind of dropped into my head, and I asked a bunch of people, and their answers were very unique, and I thought it was interesting. And this was over a decade ago. And when I started my podcast, I just started asking my guests this question because I thought it was so interesting to hear people's answers. And the question is a fun one. It goes like this. If you had on your wall in your house a magic painting, and anytime you looked at this magic painting, you could feel any feeling you wanted to feel to any degree that you wanted to feel it, what feeling would you choose, and what would be on your painting to represent that feeling for you?
The moment I met Paul Bragg and he took me on that meditation experience, I saw myself walking through a stoned archway out onto a balcony about 40 feet on, a few stories up, overlooking a giant square with 1 million people. And in the background was an iconic building from every major city around the world. It represented, the globe, the world. And a gentleman named Andrew Tischler in Melbourne, Australia, heard me talk about this one day at a talk. He came up to me afterwards and asked if he could paint it. And he did. And he sent it to me. And he nailed it.
Amazing. Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. That's amazing. So for people who are just listening to this podcast, it's an actual painting of Dr. Demartini's vision, and it's very, very well done. I would love to get that photo from you as well to put in the podcast for a high quality version. Thank you. Wow.
Yes, that came to me. So I always say those with a vision flourish, those without a vision perish, as they say. But when you are authentic, that area of the brain lights up and it maximizes your associated visual images, and it allows you to clearly see strategically your vision. And I love watching people. I train people on how to access that state so they're clear. So, because once they're clear, there's a lucidity. A lot of the obstacles we see is because we haven't strategized past our obstacles and mitigated our risks and clarified our vision in life. And once we do, it's like we're now ready to set sail. So yeah, that vision came to me when I was 17. Now the painter painted me in it. I was just looking out from it in the original view, but he painted me in it because it would have no meaning to somebody else. But the point is that painting is called A Man on a Mission with a Vision and a Message.
That's awesome. Now, when you look at that painting, what do you feel? What is if you were to describe that feeling for me, what would you?
I just feel I'm inspired. This is my mission. It's what I've been dedicated to for 52 years.
So it's a feeling of inspiration, but on a mission as well.
It's what I can't wait to get up in the morning and do. When you can't wait to get up in the morning and do what you love to do, people can't wait to get it. And it's like tap dancing to work for Warren Buffett. It's doing what you love and loving what you do on a daily basis. And I've learned to delegate everything else. I haven't driven a car in 34 and a half years now. I haven't cooked since I was 24. Anything that requires an external motivation to get me to do something, I just hire people to do it. And I get on to doing what is absolutely the most inspiring thing so I can fill my day with what inspires me, which is teach, research, write, and travel to eat. I don't do anything else. I just let go of all the other stuff and just hire people to do that, let them do that. And people say, well, yeah, but it's because you're wealthy. No, I became wealthy when I started doing it. When I was 27 years old, I learned that from Alec McKinsey's book, The Time Trap. I started doing that. My business went up. My wealth built up. Everything started going up because when you live congruently with what your authentic mission is, you get rewarded in the world of authenticity.
Thank you, Dr. John Demartini, for being on the podcast. Thank you for sharing that. I will put the links for your website and the programs that you have available in the show notes below. Is there any message or anything you would like to leave the audience with after this great conversation? Thank you so much.
If you're out there just listening in for whatever reason today, you're on this lovely podcast, just know that no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, no matter what you've experienced, whatever, you're worthy of love. No matter what you've done or not done, you're worthy of love. And give yourself permission to do something extraordinary on planet Earth. You want to make a difference, define it. Don't wait for somebody else to. Just define it. Start with what you know and let what you know and watch how it grows. And then every single day, take a baby step to make a big dream. Piggy banks become biggie banks if you do. And if you keep doing incrementally motivating actions forward that are spontaneously inspiring to you, you become unstoppable. And you'll have incremental momentum that becomes unstoppable. And there's no facades out there that are going to be greater than your authentic self. So the magnificence of who you are is far greater than any fantasies you impose. So give yourself permission to be yourself. And don't, why be second at being somebody else when you can be first at being it?
Awesome. Thank you so much once again.
Well, that's all, folks. Thank you so much for watching this episode all the way to the end. Before you go, I do have a question for you, and I would love to read your answers in the comments below or on my social media. Wherever you're watching or listening to this, please drop me a comment and let me know your answer to this question. What is your unique and extraordinary vision for your life, and what steps are you taking today to make that more of a reality? I'm going to lead by example and share with you my answer that makes me a little uncomfortable, but I want to say it out loud. I want to make movies, feature-length films to share with the world that bring people back to the wonder and awe that's inside us all, to inspire a greater sense of appreciation for the sacredness of life. Now, I'm doing podcasts now. It's helping me refine my skills of working with a team, all these different components that go into making this show. My next step will be making short films. I can't wait to share those with you. And then eventually I'll be making feature films. That is my crystal clear vision. What is yours? Please share with me your answer in the comments below. I would love to read it. Now, we also have a podcast after party with Dr. John Demartini coming up in a couple of days, September 11th. If you want to be a part of that and you want to share your crystal clear vision for your life and what you're doing to make that more of a reality, head on over to timehascome.com and join the podcast after party, where we get to continue this conversation. You can ask questions and we can dive deeper into everything that was talked about in this conversation, because it was a good one. I hope you took notes. I also want to thank all the members of timehascome.com currently who are supporting each other, supporting this show, and supporting my vision for what I'm doing here with this podcast, getting outside your comfort zone, learning new things, trying new things, and embracing the sacredness of your life. Thank you for your support. It is greatly appreciated. Now, my last comment is about scammers. There's always scammers out there, and I have to do these more regularly. So be aware, be careful. There's probably going to be scammers that are going to be saying, hey, it's Graham, and I'm raising money for my new film. Help me raise money. So that's probably a tactic they're going to use, because they're watching this and they're going, well, what's our latest one now? It'll probably be that. So keep an eye out for that. They'll use my name, they'll use my photo, they'll even put a blue check mark in their profile photo sometimes. They'll say it's a private fan club, they'll say Graham Wardle fundraising page, they'll say fraud prevention and retrieving your stolen money from their buddy who stole it from you last week. They're always thinking up new ways to steal money from people. So be careful, be vigilant, and with AI and deepfake technology, they can probably scan my voice, scan my face, and send you videos that aren't real. So be very careful, very, very careful. I'm not developing relationships with people. I'm not talking with people privately offline. And then I'm not going to be asking you for money privately. Give me your bank account details or wire me this money. That's not me, guys. That's a scam. So be smart about it. And if you know somebody who's being scammed, please show them this part of the podcast and let them know it's most likely, no, it is a scammer. I know it is a scammer. It's not me. That's it, guys. Thank you for listening to that PSA. Please stay vigilant, and I will see you all on September 11th for the podcast after party.